All right, Dad, where we at?
We're at the front of the Bolling big house, is everybody called it. Originally built by George Esser.
And about what year?
Around 1918. That's the portico up there. That goes into that doorway, goes into a hall. Bedroom over there. Downstairs there's 3 rooms with the sliding doors.
When did your father buy the place?
Well, I was about either 5 or 6 years old.
So I've been
That
about.
would either be around 1930 or 1931.
How long did you live here?
I lived here till I got, well, until my mother died. Well, I tell my dad, well, I lived here until I lived over in that house over there 12 years before I got down and moved to that other house. That would have been, oh God, a long time, that's all I know. But it was one of the beautiful homes.
How many people lived here when you lived here?
Well, of course, different times, we always had at least one renter. One state policeman nearly always boarded here. One time, the night that my sister got killed, we were all home but one. My sister lived down the road. Everybody other than that, everybody was home. Me and a cousin of mine were sleeping on the 3rd floor. My mother was sick in bed on the 2nd floor. The renter was in the next adjoining room. And the policeman accidentally shot and killed my sister in the adjoining room.
What year? How many rooms does it have? You remember?
Well, I say counting small rooms and everything is about 18, but the bigger rooms is not that many. I just sit down and think them in.
How many bathrooms?
There was 3 bathrooms upstairs and just a half bath downstairs.
Did you always have hot water?
Oh yeah.
Does it have a boiler room in there, a water heater? What was it?
Well, the boiler had a hot water boiler, and then it had hot water heat, and radiators. It was back in the days before they had circulating pumps. The water circulated by gravity. And, so you had to heat a whole lot of water to get the heat. And they had a central vacuum system. The vacuum cleaner was in the basement, and it piped to every room. You just took your hose and plugged it in, pushed the switch, turned it on downstairs, and it all went to the central vacuum system was put in here back in 1900.
Were the columns there when they bought it?
Yes, you were.
What about the?
That's called the Corinthian column.
What about those little quilling cat lion things? Were those original or is that
No,
new?
those have been added since the present owner bought it.
Now, what were you saying about the worst whipping you got?
When I chiseled the eaves off those 2 pieces of marble. With chiseling on, I didn't chisel it all off. Somebody else removed the rest of it. Because my dad told Mr. Esser that they would be there as long as he had it, and they were. The present owner must have had them taken off.
Do you remember how much you paid, or they paid for the house when he bought it?
No idea, other than it was sold for taxes.
It was sold for taxes. So the Esser guy didn't pay his taxes?
Well, the story I got on it was, Mr. Esser built his home back during hard times. He had it charged to business improvement. And so when the tax people hit him, the coal business was on the bottom. And he couldn't pay it. And so it was sold for taxes. You see what's happened to that wall out there?
Mm-hmm.
You know what done that?
I know. What do you?
Roots from the trees. These marble, all hand cut. I mean, that the stone, they've been cleaned with a steam cleaner.
What about the brick?
The brick was clean too.
Was the brick handmade?
Well, those brick, I was told, and I don't know if that's true or not, I was told that brick came from Cuba.
What about some other fun facts about the house? Anything about how it was built, or when? Anything you remember about it?
Well, other than the fact that the floor joists were supposed to have been two by tens on 1 foot centers, and they're oversized. They're more like probably 2.5. It's thick. They're big, huge hemlock. But the flooring has hardly moved any in all these years.
Do you remember the square footage?
I thought it was 7,000. It might not be that much. I'm not sure.
And it has a basement also?
It has a partial basement.
You said about renting out. Would you rent out rooms in this house or the guest house in the back?
No, we didn't. I lived in the guest house 12 years. That first 12 years after I got married. Before that, my mother rented it some, but we had never had more than one person renting that stayed inside the big house.
And how did it end up getting sold to Carl McAfee?
Well,
the lawyer.
My mother died, and things were just none of the way the property was left and things were left, and no individual had the power to live in it and could afford it. So Carl McAfee bought it at a very cheap price, considering, but he had to spend a lot of money on it too.
What about things like the trim at the top? Was that all original, or has that been redone?
That concealed gutter up there has been changed completely from what it was. It's a lot better than what it was. The fire got on fire on the third story, burnt the roof off of it, and they were able to replace the roof with a tile from the same company that made the original tile.
And what caused the fire?
Man was cleaning the paint to burn the paint off to paint it.
And so, do you remember about what year what happened after I guess you said your mother died? How long did it stay vacant? Did it rent out? When
it rented a little bit, not much.
How long of a time period was it between your mother? I guess your mother lived in it up until she died.
Oh yeah.
And so, what year did she die?
I'm more worse on dates, honey. I don't know.
Was it 70s, 80s?
I couldn't tell you. Time gets away from an old man. I just don't know.
Do you remember, or do you know how long it pretty much sat vacant until Carl McAfee purchased it?
It was, I don't know.
Isn't there also... Didn't they also take a picture in the inside and use it for a record cover?
Yeah, I've got the record back home.
Do you remember anything about that? Did the guy approach you just to do it, or was it local?
Yeah, he asked to take a picture there. He was for the cover of a record he was making to put on the market.
Do you remember? Is this fence original?
Huh?
How long's this fence been here?
It's original.
This original cast iron fence?
Yes.
Built into the marble?
Yeah, it's not marble, it's sandstone.
Oh, so, yeah, you're right.
But
I think I'd know that. Where was it? Did the school used to be? Where did the school used to be?
Huh?
Did the school used to be right across the street?
High school used to sit on the left right there. The grade school was down here where the play things are. The grade school was larger than the high school, and it was older. It was a pretty old building. It was had wood floors. It was, I guess, counting the auditorium, it was about 4 stories, I guess.
Do you remember when they tore it down?
No, I don't.
Did you go to school there?
Yeah, I went to school there and high school there.
So you didn't go to J.I. Burton up the street? I thought that's where the high school used to be.
No, I didn't go to J.I. Burton, but I dug the foundation for J.I. Burton School.
Anything else? Any other memories or things about the house you remember?
Well, right offhand, I can't think of any. I know right here in the wintertime, we used to have some bad winters. Right here, we'd start sliding down this sidewalk was the feet. And after a while, we get it so slick you could go start there and go clear way down the street there, sliding on your shoes. But they made a beautiful park over there. The man who built the house lived up the street a ways till he died.
And you said that used to be a concrete walkway. They've added the brick tile.
Huh?
You said that used to be concrete, and they just added brick tile.
They've added the tile to it, yeah.
Has the color of it really changed at all, or is that pretty much the original color?
It's a little bit faded, maybe. They had it cleaned once, I know of, maybe twice. Those columns are beautiful. Those are Corinthian style columns.
What is that, like the same windows, everything pretty much original?
Yeah, as far as I know, I don't think any of that's been changed. Don't look like it's been changed. I don't know.
Where was your room at?
Well, I stepped on the top floor one for a while, and then I had this side here go one room. That's the biggest bedroom in the house, is right there. It's at least 20, maybe bigger than that. And another bedroom joining that, and the bedroom that I and my brother lived in was the next one down. And it also had a sleeping porch attached to it. What they called a sleeping porch in those days. I don't know what it actually was. And then the other side, here there was this bedroom on this side, and then across the hall was another bedroom, and one in between, so it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's a sleeping porch on that one too. Counting sleeping porches, it was about seven I guess.
So on average, about how many people lived here at any given time? Like come supper time, generally how many people were here?
Well, usually we had quite a few, but the latter years, of course, was just my mother, her daughter, and my dad, and so forth. There were times when me and my brother and sister.
Anything else you want to say before I turn the recording off?
No, I guess not, except that porch over there on the back side over here was rebuilt. The side porch over here.
Why was it rebuilt? What happened to it?
Well, it had a glass, and it got bad, and we had to do some repair work to it. That concrete wall on this side, we had to re-pour that, and we finished that. I did that.
About when was that done?
Oh, gosh, I don't even know. My dad was still living in. I don't remember. See, the porch originally came out like this, close to the sidewalk. Now, when my dad bought it, he tore that down and built it like it is now. There must have been something wrong with it. Well, I don't think my dad would have tore it down and spent that money for nothing. But evidently, the construction-wise, it must have been weak or something, because both sides came out, clear out like in a semicircle to the walk out here. And they were redone. I guess that's about it. My mother's rose garden was on the other side.
You still have some of those roses, don't you?
I still have a couple of roses that my mother had.
So they're probably over 100 years old.
Yeah. And they're beautiful.
All right, signing off on this one.
All right. Charlie Daniels was a very good friend of mine, and he was the one who invited me to join the Lions Club years ago. And the state convention was at Richmond that year, and Charlie invited me to go with him, and wanted me to go with him. And I asked him, I said, "Have you got reservations?" He said, "No, but we'll get a room." Well, the convention was I believe it was the Marshall Hotel in Richmond. I'm not positive about that. one of the better hotels. Anyhow, we get to Richmond, and we go in, and Charlie goes up to the desk clerk, and he's asked for a room. And the man says, "Fella, we don't have any rooms. We're all full up. They haven't got a room." So we left and went up to visit one of his friends in one of the rooms upstairs. He had that man to call and ask if they had a room for Charlie Daniels. The guy said no. So two other people he got with to their rooms and had them to call and ask if they had a room for Charlie Daniels. They said no. So we go back down to the lobby. Charlie walks over to the desk clerk and asks if they got a room. He said, "I have told you time and time again, we have no rooms." But Charlie said, "Well, now if the governor was coming, you'd have a room with you." But he figured he always save a few rooms for important people. The man said, "Well, yeah." But he said, "The governor ain't coming." So the guy gave us a room, so he did get a room in the Marshall Hotel. Charlie, he was so more or less the ringleader of a group we called the Bearded Beauties. It was a group in the Lions Club which varied from time to time as to who they were and when they went. But they went to international Lions conventions. Went to international Lions conventions mostly. And I went with them to Chicago, Atlantic City, New York, and Nice, France, and San Francisco. And after that we went at Hillbilly. We had the bib overalls and worst shoes we could get, road shoes, and worn out clothes, and suitcases held together with bale hay wire. And we had no moonshine still, which we ran off a little stuff, more or less for show. So we were in Chicago, and we had set up straight across from the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms people. And they'd already had published in the paper that we were going to make moonshine the next day. So this man came up, he said, "Here you all going to make some moonshine." And Charlie said, "Yeah." He said, "No." He said, "No, you're not." And Charlie said, "Yeah, we are." He said, "No, you're not." So he showed him his badge and papers. So somebody had evidently called and complained about it. And so they called several senators and congressmen, tried to get them off their back, but to no avail. So they sent men everywhere to have us to pour the mash out. That's good mash. And so they told me to delay them till they could get some photographers down there. So I told the man, I said, "We can't pull that out here." I said, "It's in the storm drain." I said, "It'll smell bad." And I said, "It's too heavy to carry anyhow. I'll send somebody in and get a bucket." He said, "All right." So I told the man not to come back. So he was gone and gone. Finally, the guy wondered where he was. I said, "Well, I don't know." I said, "I'll send somebody else," which I did. And he went on again. So about the third time I said I'd send somebody, he said no, said there's nobody else leaving here. But about that time, the photographers got there. They took their pictures it went on nationwide on the news. So our club got the Lido Award that year, which was only given to 2 clubs the whole year, and it was for public relations. And our club got one, and the other club that got it was in India. But anyhow, after we had taken the pictures and all, then we picked it up and carried it over and poured it out. So after that, as we got back home, they had sent somebody from Richmond up to Charlie Daniels' plumbing place. He was in the plumbing business, to have holes drilled in that steel and have pictures taken of it. Well, Archie Woods was a good friend of mine. He was happened to be down there that day. And Archie said somewhere right now somebody's stealing $1 million from the government. And they send somebody up here to take pictures of somebody, but it's something they're doing nothing but having a little fun with. And like they've broken some great law. And they take pictures of it to see that it's not used again. So basically we could take the steel after that, but we couldn't use it. Well, we went to different places, and one in Miami they went to. I didn't go on that one. Charlie was, he always had a live crow sit on his hat. And Charlie was on the high diving board because he had no intention of jumping off, but he messed around and figured around and finally fell off. Well, as he fell, the crow left his hat and flew over and lit on top of this woman's head. And when he did, he sort of messed on her a little bit. Old Darby Breeding got up, shook out his bandana handkerchief, went over and raised the crow's tail up, and wiped the crow's tail, and went over and sat back down. My summer vacations on road jobs, and not out in the park playing. By the time I was 14, I had my driver's license and I was driving big trucks under a shovel. I was operating a D4 bulldozer on the road job. And I also worked with the bridge crew where I helped drill and shoot down old bridges. Got some bad headaches for handling dynamite. But you soon learn, I guess, to use rubber gloves if you're going to handle that stuff.
Is it nitroglycerin?
Nitroglycerin is what it's made of, and it goes through the pore of your skin, same as it would if you were to take it if you were a heart patient. And I know once my dad he had an old shovel. It was a small shovel, only about a half-yard shovel, and it was on wheels instead of on track like the old shovel I'd ever seen. But I remember them using it when I was a little boy. And they had water pipes up the mountain. They were going to build a road up this mountain. They had water pipe taken and come to bring water up to the shovel. And it was a steam-operated shovel. And his brother operated the shovel. And one time he was working, they had to go across the river, and they made a barge out of logs and floated it across the river, so you see it wasn't real heavy. But I can remember when they used the horses to haul dirt they had a little 1-yard pan. A team of horses hooked to it, and you raised up on the handles, and it would scoop up 1 cubic yard of dirt. Then you let loose of it, and it would just slide. And when you got to where you wanted to dump it, you picked up on the handles and made a complete turn, flip over and dump the dirt out. Then they had bottom dump wagons that they load, and they'd bring them on to the field where they filled, and they'd trip it, and it would dump the load out the bottom, and the horses would pull it on over. And then they used horse-drawn equipment to level it down and compact it and all like that. So, and I can remember when they drilled with well drills to shoot the rock, and they used black powder to shoot with. And
was that the late 1930s?
That was that would have been in the 30s, yeah. Because I can remember, the things that were done during the 30s to bring us out of the Depression. But of course, luckily my dad was in a position where the government was spending money and building roads and bridges and there were walls and things around the cities and stuff to try to get the people back to work.
What about, didn't you have a farm at the same time period?
Well, I guess he got to farm about that time, or maybe about that time, I guess. And later we had a dairy farm. We had dairy cattle, and we bottled milk and delivered it to house in Norton there. We had chickens and we sold eggs. We got 60 cents a dozen for our eggs a year round. Sometimes in the wintertime, certain times they would get up to 90 cents a dozen maybe. And then in a certain time of year they'd go down pretty cheap. But we got the same price for eggs a year round. And then back during the war, so many things were rationed. Whiskey was rationed, and gasoline was rationed. You were only allowed 3 gallons of gas to have for a household, and that was to go get to the grocery store about once a week or something. But you could apply for extra gas if you had to have it for certain things. I know we got extra gas for the dairy farm, and they were called T-stamps. You got 5 gallons, you could get 5 gallons on a T-stamp. And I think the others were A-stamps, where you could get 3 gallons, of gas on those. And butter was rationed. And
No, what year was this?
that would have been in the 40s.
During the war?
During World War II. So, and the speed limit was 35 miles an hour nationwide. So, and the country pulled together, and a lot of people died. But they thought they were fighting the war to win all war. And of course, they thought that in World War I too. But looks like wars are something we're going to be with us until the good Lord comes back. Pretty well known in all of the county. His name was Hub Gilliam. Now, Hub worked in the pony mines sometimes, not too often, but. And then at the county fair, he always had in the paper that he was promised to furnish them, keep everybody well supplied in whiskey. He had a big overcoat that he'd wore. It had pockets all sewn in it, and even hot as it was, he wore that overcoat to carry his whiskey in. So and his wife bootlegged whiskey. He didn't make liquor, but they bought it at the liquor store. And when the liquor store wasn't open, they sold it, or she did. Well, they tell the story about Hub. He had quite a few children. He said the next time his wife, whose name was Melvina, got pregnant, that he was going to kill himself. So sure enough, it wasn't too long, and Melvina got pregnant. So Hub left the house early one morning, carried a rope, headed down from the house down to the barn. His mother-in-law came out on the porch and said, "Hub, where are you going?" He said, "I'm going down to the barn and hang myself." Said, "I said the next time Melvina got pregnant, I was going to kill myself." So he went down to the barn and stayed there all day. And about dusk, he come back up the road toward the house, dragging that rope. And the mother-in-law came out on the porch and said, "Hub, I thought you was going to kill yourself." I said, "Well, I was." So I got thinking I might be killing an innocent man.
You're on a roll. You only missed that first one when you weren't ready. Oh, that one got away.
Yeah.
We made it to round 2.
Darn it. Can't move his feet right. Yeah. Damn. This is harder than shooting a gun, I'll tell you.
You get stomped on this one. Round 2 is giving you a challenge. You can't miss one more. If you miss one more, you may want to advance.
Hey. You over?
They got this is the last one. One short. Hey, Dad, tell me about that one lure that you've thrown around the world.
I don't think I've got it in here.
What's the story behind it?
Well, it's a topwater plug. It's got the actual skin of bullfrog on it, and I caught 11-pound. No, I see, 7-pound, 11-ounce bass off it, and then I threw it probably around the world and never had another strike on it. You can hold dance. As you go up toward the High Knob in Norton one time, it used to be a American Legion Hall there. So we started into the dance, and the man at the door wouldn't let us in because we didn't have a tie on. So my brother took his billfold out, made us each, told me to make us a bow tie. So I took the bills and folded them up, made us a bow tie, which we clipped on with a paper clip and went back to the door and then let us in. So I guess if you got $1, you can always have a tie, provided you know how to fold it. So, there's the bow tie.
And
it was about 12 foot deep then. But the water lily now, I'd say, is just about killed all the fish in it.
did you just have a boat in here?
Oh yeah, we had a rowboat. Believe it or not, it was called the Jeep. You could go way up the holler then. It's all filled in then. You could go almost up. Well, you go up to the road, it goes up to the other dam.
So tell us about your time working at the Bolling Theater in Norton.
Well, I was about 14 years old, I guess, when I started working as an usher. And I didn't work as an usher long, but it was a real nice theater. My dad built the theater. He wanted it not to go in business himself, but he wanted the town to have a good theater and something nice. And it was. There was nothing west of Roanoke that would touch it. Had a great big stage, because back in those days they used to have a lot of stage shows, traveling stage shows. It had an orchestra pit. And
Approximately what year was it built?
I'd say we would probably be around 33, 34, something like that. Could have been around 30, could have been anywhere from 33 to 35. I'm sure it took a while to build it.
Didn't you have the seats shipped in from up north?
Yeah, the seats were bought from up north here, but back then you could buy seats, you know. Of course, when he built the Quentinwood Theater, everything was in war production. You couldn't buy any theater seats. And they were tearing down the 42nd Street Theater in New York City to build an addition to the New York Times. And this Jewish fellow up there, he had bought all the seats. And my dad bought all the seats off the main floor from the man that had them. And they were very plush seats. They had a place underneath, put your top hat and all that stuff. And they were real nice seats. That's the ones we put in the Flintwood Theater.
How many years was that the Norton Theater or the Bolling Theater open?
Oh, God. Long time. I don't know what year it was my dad sold it. But at one time he had a theater in Appalachia, and he had a theater in Norton, and a theater in Coburn, and a theater in Clintwood, and a theater in Pound. And
Now, did these theaters have sound, or were they silent movies?
no, they came in about it was built about the time when the sound came out, because I've only seen back then when I was in a theater, one or two silent movies, but at that time, it was about the time that the sound movies came out, and really everything got going. The first Technicolor movie made was the picture of Trailer the Lonesome Pine, and Fred McMurray played in it, and so it was a story of the area of Big Stone Gap and the time that the coal was getting to be developed. They had they found a little bit of iron ore, and so at that time it was a growing time for those people in those mountains. And of course, the people who owned the land didn't know much about what they had or anything. And so the politicians, they always do it. They're people who were good, you know. They passed laws that people could buy the mineral rights without buying the land. And these companies, big people out in Pennsylvania and New York and all over the country, some of them came in and bought huge tracts of land, mineral rights on land. And they got those mineral rights for about 50 cents an acre or something. So a lot of times those people thought they were getting something, you know, 50 cents an acre they thought it was like getting free candy or something, I guess. But it all turned out against them in the long run.
Did you all still own the theater during the war?
Let's see. Yeah.
Did that play a big part in all the news coming in?
Yeah, you had the newsreels in those days, and you had the Saturday movies. And Saturday was a big day, and mining camps. Everybody, all the miners, all the area around there had a lot of mining camps. It took a lot of people to mine coal in those days. And on Saturday, well, it would cost 10 cents for children to go to the movie and a quarter for adults. And they'd put the kids in the movie and then leave them there all day long. You know. So while they were out doing something else, actually the theater ended up as babysitting for them, I guess.
Well, do you remember what y'all did with the movies after they were done? Were they shipped back to the companies or destroyed? What did y'all do with the reels or the film after you were done showing the movie?
When the reels traveled in those days, you didn't have, in other words, you might have a movie that you were going to show, and maybe a theater down in another town that had shown that movie, and they would transport that film up to you. Then you'd show it, and then you'd ship it back out to either another theater or maybe back to the people who were handling it.
So I guess back then they didn't have release dates where this movie came out in all theaters on one specific day like they do now.
No. It's like when they first came out with these big time movies, religious movies. One of the first was The Robe, and we showed The Robe, and nobody else was supposed to be able to show it within a 50-mile radius for a year or more.
How long would a movie generally stay? A couple weeks, a few days, a month?
A movie like The Robe, yeah, you had to show it sometimes a week, sometimes two, for the big time movies. But usually that was bad for you, because the same amount of people would have seen it in a couple of days, I guess. And you spread it out, spread your expense out more, and so.
How many screens did it have? Did y'all just have one screen or two screens?
One screen.
Was it open every day, or was it only open like toward the weekend?
No, it was open every day.
Was it generally after like 5 o'clock, or was it kind of throughout the day?
Well, I don't remember exactly, except Saturday. Saturday opened, I know, pretty early. Right? I don't remember exactly all the times on them, but I do know that they had, and some of the towns didn't have Sunday movies. Now, most of them didn't have. Finally, they got to where they could have a movie on Sunday.
Did you all let people bring food in, or did they have to buy it there?
Well, like I said, my dad first year built the theater. He didn't build it to operate, and he didn't operate it. He had it leased out to another man. And at that time, they didn't sell any popcorn and candy, and they didn't allow any to be brought into the theater. Later on, you got to the point that your money was in popcorn and candy and drinks, and you were showing the movies. You're lucky to break even on the movies.
Would people generally get dressed up? Was it like a big ordeal to go, or is it just kind of more of an everyday?
Yeah, it come more everyday clothes you get back home. But
anything else off the top of your head? Anything stands out about the theater?
what?
Anything stand out in your head about the theater? Any stories or anything?
Well, we used to have a lot of people, especially different types of stars, cowboy stars and things like that would come by. And then we had some that, of course, had orchestras and dancing gals and everything. And the theater was about a 750-seat house with a balcony. It was a beautiful building. Sound was good in it. We later put air conditioning in it, which we didn't have at first.
It's time that many believe Orland himself became a member.
Sorry, TV kicked on. All right, we'll pause that one.
Everybody come around, you gotta close your eyes now. Wait, close your eyes. Hold on, wait your eyes.
Wait.
George ain't sing a beat like that since he came home drinking.
All right, what was you saying about Jeeps?
I was saying there was a woman up there on High Knob. It was left up there. A big snowstorm came that night. And so it was real scenic. A friend of mine and I had gone to the knob in my Jeep. And it was so cold I couldn't hardly stand it even with insulated clothing on. we went back down to tell a man, we better get up there and get that woman. And the other boy, and I told him, I said, my brother has a GMC carry-all that might go up there. It's got more ground clearance than a Jeep. And I said, you need to go with the Jeep or the Jeep won't go. Old boy said, maybe you ain't no Jeep skinner. I said, well, I may not be, but I had the first one anybody had in Wiles County.
About what year was this?
That would have been probably around late 40s, maybe 50.
What year did you get your Jeep? About 45?
Yeah, well, I got it right after World War II. In the war ended about 2 years later. I got it in about 47, but it was a 45 model Jeep. Only had 9 miles on it when I bought it, brand new. So we went out there with his vehicle. It was so cold, the snow was almost like pellets. It was so cold. We got out there, the woman was sitting on the bed with a blanket around her, trying to keep warm. And she said she had tried 3 times to go down to another cabin, and wild dogs had run her back in. So we brought her off. She lost 2 toes from frostbite. But after we got out to the knob, it was about 4 miles from there, we found where the old boy tried to follow us in his Jeep and where he dug it out. So it wouldn't go. So luckily my brother had a machine that would go out there. But the snow was, they was drifts 6, 7 foot high drifts that we went through. But it was like powder, it was so cold. It wasn't nowhere like a wet snow, which was slick. It was just knock it out of the way, it was so cold. But luckily, if he hadn't had that vehicle and they hadn't gotten there, so he probably would have lost a lot. On the trip we took to Chicago, we left out of Bristol Airport, and it was a prop plane. We had the group was, we had one fellow who played the part of the sheriff, one fellow who was a minister, a preacher, one fellow who played more or less part of what we called the pappy, or the old man of the group. So we got ready to board the plane. Well, old Pappy, he goes out with his cane and he's testing the tires on the plane, hitting them with his cane. And so we got loaded, and so Darby, the old man, and the sheriff, they had baked some cornbread, and so they were passing out cornbread and onions to other passengers on the plane. This one gentleman sitting there, he said no, he didn't want any cornbread. And he was looking at some fancy catalogs, magazines. So Darby was standing behind him watching him, looking over his shoulder at his magazine. The guy kept looking back at him, and finally Darby said, "My pappy had a bull like that." The guy said he did. He said, "Yeah." I said, "What kind of bull was he?" He said he was a red one. The guy looked at him and grinned and said, "Give me some of that cornbread and onions." But I was sitting beside this lady, and I had one hand tied up with a hook on one hand. She asked me how I lost my hand. I told her, I said, "Well, I lost it in the hay baler. I'm in the threshing machine." So she asked me, I had a jug, about a half a jug of moonshine. She asked for a drink of it, and I said, "I don't know." So I asked the hostess, she said, "Will I be all right?" I said, "What would you like to have?" I said, "Some water." So I gave the lady a drink of it, and wasn't long she asked for another drink. Finally, she asked me for another, and I said, "Lady, I don't believe you know what you're drinking." Well, she was about to get mad, and I said, "Well, honey, I tell you what, you just drink all you want." So she was getting higher, and she kept asking me if I would take care of her when we got to Chicago. And I said, "I can't take care of you when we get to Chicago." I said, "I got to leave Chicago. We're going to San Francisco." That's what it was. So the longer she sat there, the worse she got. So finally, when we landed, and I got off the plane, I think she was giving the pilot and the hostess a lot of trouble. So I was glad to get away from that one. But in San Francisco, after we ran into nice people there, I wanted to go see the big trees. I couldn't get anybody to go with me. We were only about 30 minutes from them. But San Francisco is a beautiful city. With all that's wrong with it, it is a beautiful city. So I guess that about winds up most of the tales we could tell on the Recorded Beauty. The Lions Club, when we met in Chicago, the man who started Lions International was there. And I could only imagine the pride that he felt, knowing that he started Lions International and lived to see 25,000 Lions at an international convention in Chicago. The Lions, one thing about the Lions or the Kiwanis clubs or the any of the service clubs, the money that you donate to these clubs goes 100% to whatever their cause is. And the Lions, we deal with eyesight and eye prevention and helping people who are blind and helping sometimes with operations, where the other service clubs do their thing. But the money that you donate, every bit of it goes to their cause. Their club is run out of their own pocket. So it's 100% donation goes to whatever their cause is, and whatever they work for. Their Lions is eyesight, and of course other service clubs have every other things that they do, and you will find that if you really want to help someone and know that what money you donate will go to that cause, a good service club is a good way to go. I guess it winds it up to them. After World War II, I was wanting to get an Army Jeep. So my dad and I had gone down to Oak Ridge on 3 or 4 different occasions. Dad did buy an old shovel down there. But every Jeep I found, just bad shape, I didn't think it was worth taking home. So I sort of forgot about it. I mean, I wasn't in service, but a good friend of mine went through the whole thing, and he applied to get a Jeep, and that's what I was trying to get him on, was what his application that he put in. So I sort of forgot about it and went on for a few months. A fella I knew came in over one day. He had a brand new Jeep. He took me for a ride in it. I showed him the papers I had. He said, gosh almighty, he said, you write a letter to this general, I forgot his name now, and he said, in Columbus, Ohio, he said, I'll guarantee you'll have a new Jeep in 2 weeks. Send a certified check for $782. So I got a certified check for $782. Mailed it to the general. I didn't hear anything from him for a couple of weeks, but when I got a letter back from him, he said he didn't have a new Jeep, but he had a substantially new Jeep. And if I wanted it, I could have it. So I figured it probably something with a few thousand miles on it. So I wrote back that I'd take it. So we got on the train. Train ran from Norton. At that time, when we got on the train, rode the train through to Columbus, Ohio. Got out, went over to the Army Depot, and I never saw so much equipment, trucks, and everything in my life. The guy told me where it was. I went out there to get it. When I looked at it, I was very much surprised because it only had 9 miles on it. So it was brand new. So we drove it back to Columbus, Ohio. It was in October. Like froze to death. It was cold, no heat on it. No side curtains. Fact is, I started staying in Jenkins, Kentucky. I got to go. But after we crossed over the mountain from Jenkins into Virginia, there was at least 15 degrees difference in the temperature. So we were very comfortable in coming back the rest of the way. And I drove from Columbus, Ohio to Northern Virginia on a tank of gas, 14 gallons of gas. And I kept that Jeep 10 years. And I wish I still had it. In playing high school football, you know, we really only had 11 grades in high school, in school. So when you went to the 8th grade, you were in high school. And then in the 8th grade, you could play football. But while I was in high school, they added another grade. So actually, I played 5 years of high school football. And we never had many players. And we had, probably, I remember the last year we played, we only had 16 players. And of course, the first year I played football, we had just leather helmets. And a little later they came out with better helmets, but you didn't get a nose guard unless somebody busted your lip or broke your nose. And they put your nose guard on. And I can't remember what team we were playing. Anyhow, we were taught to block, to get down, and you ran from that position. You didn't get down and then raise up and start pushing. You made your step from your down position, and you were allowed to use your elbow as long as you had this hand in against your chest. You use the elbow and you block with your shoulder. And I remember once this big boy, he weighed me about several pounds, and they had one play that they shifted over on. He shifted over on me. But the first time he shifted over, he said, "Little man," said, "if you would just step aside, you won't get hurt." And when they centered the ball, I hit him, and I knocked the ball carrier down with him. Well, the rest of the night, when he said, "I come over there," he didn't say, "Get out of the way, little man." But I was, what you might say, I was an aggressive ball player. And I didn't fight dirty. I mean, play dirty. I was very aggressive. Our coach gave me a compliment, not to me, but to another fella, who said I was the best guard he ever had in the years that he coached.
And where did you play ball at?
I played ball in Norton. It was back then during the war there, we played the same. They didn't, on account of traveling and gas and everything, we played the same teams twice in the same year. We only played half county football. Actually, it didn't count against your record or that. So I guess that's probably one reason I got to play 5 years football. But my main coach was Sam Lawson, and another little fella that coached there had played ball with Sam Lawson in Milligan, and he only weighed 135 pounds, and he made Little All-American. He could run like the wind.
Did you play college ball?
No, I didn't get in. I didn't go to college, but I doubt if I could have made it any college football player. I didn't have the size, but I did pass the entrance exam to go to the University of Virginia, but I didn't go. Couldn't find any. The closest place I could find a school was 35 miles from the school. So veterans had preference on living quarters. So I don't know that I would have been a great scholar or not, but anyhow, I think I wanted to go to college, but I didn't go. Well, this is about my dad when he was in road construction, and I know this to be a fact because the girl that worked for the highway department that I used to date a little bit brought me a copy of the letter. I can't remember the name of the other fellow, but it seems that my dad, in an argument with the highway engineer, had called the man an SOB. And so they refused to let my dad come back on the job until he gave the man a written apology. So he stayed off for as long as he could, and finally he decided he was going to have to apologize to go back on the job. So the letter the girl brought me, I can't remember the man's name, but anyhow it went like this. It said, "Dear Mr. So-and-so, my friends have informed me I called you an SOB. Said, if you're not one, I apologize." And they accepted the apology. And another was when my dad, most of the time when he was building roads, he'd be down on the field where the dirt was being hauled to. And his brother was running the shovel, so the trucks quit coming. So he went back up to see what was wrong. Well, this highway inspector had him shut down. My dad asked his brother, said, why he wasn't working. He said, well, they shut us down. He said, do you work for me or do you work for them? He said, I work for you. He said, well, go to work. So he went to work. So the inspector left the job and came back with the paper to serve on him, to stop him from working. My dad looked at the paper, looked around at all the equipment sitting there not working. He looked at the inspector and said, I think I've got enough money to finish this job. And he said, I'm going to finish it. He said, when I finish it, if the state of Virginia don't want to pay me for it, he said, I'll put a gate across both damn ends of it. Well, I've got one more little story I'll tell you about Hub. Hub said he went to the Tennessee State Fair one time. Said they had a contest who could imitate Hank Snow the best, and Hub said, I won it. And he said Hank Snow was there. He came in second.
How do you feel about the way today's Congress and Senate are going?
Well, the way I feel about things right now is not too good. I think we're entitled to honest government. We've never had completely honest government, and I don't think we ever will. Greed has destroyed a lot of countries, and it looks like greed may do the same thing to us unless the American people wake up and start voting people for their integrity and their honesty. Then instead of voting party lines, because party lines will destroy our country. You got 7,500 lobbyists in Washington, D.C. now. And for that many lobbyists to make a living, somebody is buying a lot of votes. The man who made the most money last year as a lobbyist in Washington, D.C. was the ex-governor from Tennessee. He made $750,000 as a lobbyist for 1 year. So it looks like the thing to get this, I think, to get this country back is go to the fair tax. And I think when we do that, companies will start coming back to this country instead of running someplace else. And you can't have an economy of just people who are consumers. You got to have people who also provide the things that we buy as well as consume the things that we sell. And until that happens, we will not come out of this in the right way.
Then you used to work for the government?
I worked for the government for 14 years. When I first started working for the government, I had 100% health care. And by the time I worked 14 years for them and I retired, I had 80% coverage. But Congress still had their 100%.
You don't have that now.
So you're a public servant? Or,
Well,
or a
I
government
was
servant?
a public employee. You get to be a public servant when you get elected.
So, of all the fishing you've done, what's your favorite fish to go after?
One of my favorite fish would be bluegill. I've caught some good bass. And I used to fish for bass pretty heavy, but actually, sometimes I don't like to eat the bass as good as I do bluegill. And I like the action, you know, when you get to get bass on. I like both of them, I guess, but equally depending on what's hitting at the time, I guess.
Now, which one do you enjoy, fishing for bluegill more or fishing for bass more? Not as much eating it. What's your favorite to fish for?
I don't know. I guess it varies, you know, from time to time. Sometimes the bass are hitting good, you go after the bass. And I never was very good at fishing when the fish are deep, except like trolling or something. But when the fish are down deep and you have to fish 30 feet down or something like that, seems like I've never done too good on that, except when I was trolling real slow across some horns. And I've caught some good bass that way.
So, fishing for bass, what's your favorite way to fish? Do you like to use plugs or spinners, worm, plastic, reel?
I'm not. I like the worm fish, and I like the spinnerbaits. And, so I think either one of them are good. Sometimes you're hitting one better than you are the other. I know that. So just more or less depends on the action, whether you know if you're fishing worth the time. And I fished up in Canada. We were fishing primarily for walleye. And of course they had northerns in there too. They had some big northerns. And but I didn't like eating the northerns. They're slimy fish to me. But the walleye is a good eating fish. One of the best.
So, what's your favorite fish to eat? Bluegill?
Yes, bluegill. Good, you know, you get bluegill size that you can fillet out, and the best tasting fish there is, in my opinion. Of course, there's about 25 different varieties of the sunfish, they call them, and some of them are different colors. Everybody calls them bluegills, you know, but they're not all bluegills. Sunfish, sun perch.
Do you like to broil them, fry them? What's your preferred way of eating the fish?
I like to roll them meal and fry them. That's the way they taste the best to me. Now bass, a lot of times I will broil them, but bluegill, they're too small usually to broil.
Now, do you fish any differently if you're fishing from the bank or if you're fishing off the boat? In other words, you try to do different styles of fishing when you're fishing with the same. Say you've already decided I want to use this plug, but do you use any? You know, is there any tricks to, you know, if you're fishing along the banks, is there any tricks you try to do? If you're fishing off the boat, any type of tricks you try to do with any type of plug?
Well, usually they always send a guy on the bank tries to fish out as far as he can. The man on the boat tries to fish as close to the bank as he can. So, I guess I've never done a whole lot of bank fishing, but I don't mind. You know, it's all right if you get a little action. We used to catch stripes that way from the bank, and of course I have caught some crappie, but you have more choices of fishing with the boat. I used to like to fish what we call the jumps. Late in the afternoon, you just paddle your boat around a little bit out and wait for a fish to jump close enough to jump. Break the water close enough to the boat that you could throw a lure into it real quick. And sometimes you catch some big ones that way.
Where'd you get that thing from?
A friend of mine was in Jim Snow's Flying Tigers before World War II. And he brought this one and two others back from China. And where the Japanese were fighting in China. And so some of these are worth quite a bit depending on what the family was. They say that the history of the family that owned the sword, they say it's on the handle. So you take an expert to unwrap that handle and put it back. It's an ivory beaded handle. And terrifically sharp.
How old do you think it is?
Oh gosh. It goes back before World War II.
Now, didn't he bring back 3 swords?
Huh?
Did he bring back 3 swords?
3 swords, yeah. This was the largest one. The others were smaller, a little bit smaller. And
Who gave it to you?
Bill Fleming.
Mom.
His wife, grandfather was one of the lawyers in the Stokes monkey trial, they called it, down in, I believe it was in Dayton, Tennessee. Back when they fired this teacher because he was teaching evolution.
When was that?
Huh?
When was that?
Oh gosh, it's a long time ago, honey. Back in the 1800s. But, yeah, there was a movie made about it. Very good movie, you ought to try to see it. In going to the convention, international convention in Nice, France, there were only 3 of us that went. Myself, John Harmon, and Charlie Daniels. John Harmon was a local electrical contractor. And it always been a small town. Everybody pretty well knew each other and friends. But anyhow, on the way to, I had made a joke box called a mongoose box. It's about 30 inches long and about 10 by 10, with a petition in the center, with like a rat hole in between the petition, with a little wire connected to a little tail that's sticking through the petition that you can make wiggle, make look like something alive was in it. Across the back part of it, we had chicken wire, so you could see down in there. Then the lid was fastened with a spring-loaded hinges, and it could be very easily tripped. Attached to the lid was a foxtail, pretty long. So anyhow, we had landed in Oreo Airport, and I was walking and had that mongoose bus carrying it. And this our airline official of some sort came out and said, "No mongoose, no mongoose." I kept trying to explain to him that it was just a joke. But anyhow, finally Charlie said, "Show him the mongoose." So I set it down on the floor of the middle of the airport. Several hundred people standing around looking. I got him interested in and got him awful close, and I tell him you have to watch close because this mongoose is fast. I got him down real close, and I sprung that lid open, and out jumped the foxtail. Scared him so bad he did a backward somersault. Everybody laughed so bad that he never checked anything else or luggage or nothing else when we went through customs. So I showed the mongoose box on several occasions. We always took a mongoose box. Had a lot of fun showing people it, and they got scared. In France, one place I was in Italy, and I showed the man the mongoose. So he'd run down the street away and get somebody and bring him back up to show him the mongoose. So he was getting people, gathering people up for me to show the mongoose too. So we'd gone, well, we were staying in Monaco, although we had to go travel to Nice every day. And so we went into Monaco, gambling casino there. Charlie had this live crow sitting on his head, and he wouldn't let him go in with it. And so Charlie said, "Well, can I check my hat?" He said, "Yeah." So we gave him his hat, and she put it up on a shelf and checked his hat with the crow on it. So the crow sat there until we got ready to leave, and Charlie got to come out and got his hat on, and the crow's still on there. So we had a lot of different things we had done in line with the Beardy Beauty. Anyhow, we were staying with right in, not only about a block and a half from the College Bijou. And Charlie, we had gone up to a doctor friend's room of his, and he asked us if we were going to go to the Follies spiritual. And I said, "Well, I doubt if they'd let us in the way we were dressed." He said, "Well, they wouldn't, anyway, we always had a full growth of beard that we let grow for 3 months, and our hair was grown for 3 months without being trimmed, so you imagine we looked pretty rough." But the man said, "Well," said, you ought to go see it since you're here. So they won't care nothing about your beard or your hair." I said, "Oh, you're about my size." I said, "I'll lend you a suit." So we decided, John Harmon and I decided to go. So we got down, the car charge, and John went up and asked how much a ticket was. He come back and he asked me, "So what kind of ticket you want?" I said, "I want the best seat in the house." I said, "I don't figure I'll ever see this again. I want the best seat in the house." He said, "Well, it's the best seat in the house, $8 a half." But you can imagine how long ago that's been. So anyhow, we didn't have a theater seat. We had a big Chippendale chair on the front row. And they put on one terrific show. And nothing vulgar, but some of it revealing, I guess you might say, but it was a terrific show. But after we left Paris, while we were in Paris, we decided to go to the Louvre. Charlie Daniels had been there before, and he had been to the Louvre, so he didn't go inside. But John Harmon and I went in and looked at some of the stuff in the museum. And when we came out, Charlie was saying he had him a gourd. People used to have to cut out to make a drink out of. And he was standing out in front there with that gourd. People would come by and start dropping money in it. So anyhow, this couple came up. One of them spoke a little bit of French, tried to talk, but Charlie just like he didn't understand him. Well, the woman went up, stood beside Charlie, and the man took her picture, and then he went up, stood beside Charlie, and she took his picture. So this guy said, "I don't know where this man's from." And finally Charlie said, "Well," I said, "Where are you from, buddy?" And I knew he had to be an American. I said, "I'm from a little town in Virginia." He said, "You wouldn't know where it was." He said, "I might. Where are you from?" He said, "Coburn, Virginia," which is 11 miles from where we live. And ran into a man right in Paris, that was from town that just 11 miles away from where we were. In fact, I was instrumental in organizing the Lions Club in Coburn, and I got an award for that. So there were a lot of different places we went when different things happened. I know in San Francisco, there was a bar there, was mostly all male bar. I don't think I ever saw a woman in there. And when we were close, the hotel we were staying in was close to the bar. So we'd go into the bar, and we'd been there for 5 minutes. Everybody be setting drinks up in front of us. And we never bought a drink while we was in San Francisco. But then I ran into this man who was originally from Jenkins, Kentucky, which was about 20 miles from where we live. And my grandfather had called Pound, which was about 16 miles from where we lived. But this man described my grandfather's place to a T. He had gone there when he was about living back in Kentucky, and go there and buy moonshine whiskey. And so he had a construction company in San Francisco, and he had sold it, and he and his brother were starting another company. Anyhow, he had told us he wanted to take us to dinner at night, and he said, I'm going to tell my secretary that you're a Virginia gentleman and she'll be formal. So he brought her, of course he had a tux on, and she was in a beautiful white gown, and we were in bib overalls. So anyhow, he had told us, we put a pretty good joke on her, but he had told me if at any time I ever wanted to go trout fishing, he had the best trout fishing in the United States. He called his secretary and she would set it up, which of course I never did. I put it all back.
Did you ever catch any turtle out of here?
Yeah, I never did try to get them myself. I used to shoot them with a 45-70. They'd blow them up all over the lake. This here looks like, I don't believe what's happened here.
Did you ever get any coal off of here?
Huh?
Did you ever get any coal?
Yeah, there was coal right in here. You're not too far down that way, and you'll find where your milk was lined up to. And then a fella lived above us. He had a whole lot of coal out of it. But the big coal come and missed the top of our hill. And hit in above us. There was coal below us and coal above us. There wasn't a whole lot of coal we got.
Did you all build this pond?
Yeah, my dad built it.
What about the next one up? That one too? Just dam it up?
Yeah, I built it. I helped build it.
How long ago was it that Frank threw those seeds in? For the lily pads?
Well, Frank didn't put them in. My brother-in-law put them in. Y'all just me. What, 60 years?
When you used to work up here and Frank would sneak off, go swimming?
Oh yeah, we'd be holding corn, and him and Bobby would get real fast holding. They'd get to the end of the road ahead of everybody else, and they'd run off and come down here and swim. And then, if I did it, I got whipped.
Where was the corn at up on the top of the hill?
Way back on in there. That's the mountain back in that way. My dad's family grew up around Flat Gap, and
Virginia? Is that near Pound, Virginia?
Yeah, it's between Pound and Kentucky. And he was the oldest of 14 children. And he started out with, he went to what they called Gladeville College at that time up at WWII. And it was probably about like high school now, I guess. And he showed me a mountain on the top of that old Pound one time that he had for sauerkraut cropped that as a young man. And he also had when he and my wife and my mother got married, they had a one-room cabin with a dirt floor.
What were their names?
My mother's name was Mary Jane. And,
What was her last name, maiden name?
her maiden name was Mullins. She, and then he had a little country store for a while, and he was also a deputy sheriff. And this fella came in one time, and of course back in those days, every place had one or two tough guys, bullies and so forth. But nothing like now where they're all on dope in by key now. But anyhow, he was raised drunk, raising Cain, and I guess my dad might have been a little bit afraid of him. I don't know. He's a bigger man than he was. Finally, my dad just pulled out his handcuffs and he threw them to the guy and said, "Here," for an instant, without thinking the guy caught the handcuffs. And while he was catching the handcuffs, my dad pulled his .38 told him to put him on. But he had to walk him 12 miles to put him in jail. The only way he fell was complaining about it hurting, and his dad took the handcuffs off him. He jumped off a railroad trestle and got away. So later on, my dad moved from Founding to Norton, and he had a feed store at one time. Of course, back in those days, most people had a cow and a few hogs, and even in town. And but the government was in the Depression, and it started coming out of the Depression because the government was spending money trying to get things going, and a lot of public works. And of course, back in those days, there were a lot of people that would work if they had a job. And so he got into road construction. At that time, I can remember some of the roads that they way back when they were using some horses to build roads.
About what year was that?
Oh gosh, I don't know what year it was. It's back in I was born in 25, probably between 30, 33, 4, 5, something like that. And they, like I said, they were building horses, using horses to build roads. And they had steam engine, a little old steam engine, probably a half-yard bucket on it. And they would actually run with steam. And they had tractors, but after before they put blades on them, they just used them for pulling the other equipment with. And he was gone most of the time, during the week. They stayed on the road jobs. My sister, she had a place where some of them boarded and some of them roomed. And she done the cooking and all that. But my dad he came home on a weekend. He was the one that dealt out the punishment for the family. My mother would say, "This was done that, and this was done that." Sometimes he'd whip a whole family at one time.
How many brothers and sisters do you have?
Well, I had 2 brothers, one I never saw. He died before I was born. So I had, let's see, 8 sisters. No, 9, 7 sisters. 3 more, 10 in the family. And so, like I say later on, my dad was some years he made money and some he didn't. Back in those days, the job didn't state everything. That you had so much rock and so much dirt and all that. You had to go out there and look at it and guess what it was. And if you guessed what it wrong, well, then of course it cost you more to do it. He was a man who loved work. Most people try to say they want education so you don't have to work. But an education is supposed to make you work better, not to get you out of work. My dad, there wasn't enough hours a day. He loved to work. He liked working.
Was it that, or he just hate being home with all the kids? Was it that, or he just hate being home with all the kids?
No, it wasn't. That's where the work was. You had to go where the work was. If you build a road and 100 miles away, that's where you had to go to build it. And that's what they did. He had, they would take sometimes these school teachers and make inspectors out of them. And most of them didn't have the know-how to do their job. And of course, a lot of times my dad was in argument with him. And one time he was down at the field where the dirt was coming in, the field was being put in, and his brother was running the shovel. And the dirt stopped coming, so my dad went up to see what was wrong. And the inspector had him shut down. He asked his brother, said, well, said, you working for me or the inspector? He said, I'm working for you. He said, go to work. So they did. Well, the inspector left and he came back with a paper to serve on my dad to stop him from working. My dad looked at the paper and looked around at his equipment sitting there doing nothing. And he told the inspector, he said, I think I've got enough money to finish this job, and I'm going to finish it. That when I get through with it, if the state of Virginia don't want to pay me for it, I'll build a gate across both ends of it. And he told him to go back to work. And there was another occasion where...
What was the inspector shutting him down for?
I don't know. Just probably something he didn't know what he was talking about, probably. Anyhow, there was another situation where my dad actually, he wasn't an inspector, he was a regional engineer. And another fellow had a job about 10 miles above us. They was making him take steel wool and clean this reinforcement steel and all. There's nothing wrong with that. But he was making my dad could clean his, and the guy 10 miles away, they letting him put his in the concrete without cleaning it. So my dad asked him why he had to clean his and the other man didn't. And the engineer told him, said, that's my business. That's when my dad reached through the window, he jerked him through the window and broke his jaw. Well, the state of Virginia decided they were going to not let him bid on any more jobs. So this story was told to me by his lawyer, not my dad, that he went to Richmond to meet with Shirley, who was head of the highway department, and the board. And of course they'd heard so much about him, I reckon they expected the pure devil to come in. But he had a lot of dry humor about him. After talking to him for a while, he had a lot of laughing in a good mood. And finally he told him, said, gentlemen, said, I'm not interested in getting any money from the state of Virginia I don't earn. He was suing him for $1 million. Said, if you're willing to back up and let me bid on this work, like anybody else, I'm willing to drop the suit. And they did. And he was back in, and he bidding on jobs again. Most of the roads he built were in Virginia and Tennessee. He never did, he bid on one job in Kentucky, but he never, there wasn't but him and another man that bid on the job. And they agreed, whoever, they didn't do anything illegal. They agreed that whoever got the job would pay the other $2,000. So the other guy got the job, and my dad got $2,000, but that's the only job he ever bid on in Kentucky. And a lot of things going on over in that country. We've been up on the mountain, and my brother had a cabin in what we call a place called High Knob, which is, I understand to be the second highest point in the state of Virginia. And he had a cabin there, and we had been out to the cabin, and there was one other man staying up there with a woman, and they she had a baby, and we were leaving, the man wanted to ride out with us because he wanted to come off and to get some things, and he left the woman there, and he brought the baby off. Well, the next morning, a friend of mine and myself drove up to the top of what they call the High Knob Mountain, and the snow was so deep that on the ridge going out to where the my brother's cabin was, which was about 4 miles from further out on, and the snow, it was on right on top of the ridge, so the wind came up both directions, and there were large drifts of snow that was just like powder. And this, and I had an Army Jeep, and I started out there, and I knew I couldn't go. We just lifted the Jeep off the ground and didn't have enough ground clearance. And it was so cold, and I had goose down clothing on. It was so cold, I was even colder than that. So we came back off the mountain and went down to where I knew this man would be, and told him that he should go after that woman. And I said, there's no use to try to get up there with a Jeep. And I said, Jeep won't make it. The other fellow said, happened to be there. I said, well, maybe you're not a Jeep skinner. I said, well, it may not be, but I said, I had the first one anybody in Southwest Virginia had. And I said, you won't take a Jeep there. But I said, my brother had a GMC carryall, 4-wheel drive, it's got a winch on it. I don't know if it'll go out there or not, but I said, I think if you ask him, he'll try to go out and get her. And so another man spoke up and said, well, she, all she's got to do is go out where my cabin is, and there's plenty of wood there, and plenty of food. And all we got to do is, I said, well, if she could do that, but I said, I wouldn't take a chance on her doing it. She might not do it. And I said, you don't realize how cold it is up there. So he decided he would go. So I contacted my brother. We got a GMC. We started out. We hit a couple of drifts with it. If it had been wet snow, you couldn't have gone through them. It was just like powder, so cold. And I took a picture of the big high carryall of GMC. And I had one picture taken. I went and walked ahead and got a picture of it coming through the snowdrift, and you barely can tell that there's an automobile vehicle there. So after we got to where she was, we went in the cabin. She was sitting on the bed, side of the bed, with a blanket wrapped around her. There was a bowl of water sitting on the table that was frozen solid. There's a little oil heater that's on, but there's not enough heat coming out of it for anything because there's water sitting beside of it frozen. So anyhow, we asked her, she said she had tried 3 different times to go down to this other man's cabin, and wild dogs had chased her back. And so we got her and brought her out of there, and found out later that she lost either 2 or 3 toes from frostbite. That's how cold it was. And then if we hadn't have gotten the man to go back and get her, I'm sure she would not have survived. Survival only because of people who was concerned about her. Jump! Till she was wild. You gotta get my finger.
Get her to walk around. I got it on video. Just get her to walk around. Tiny bite.
Well, I done it easy. Something else. A lot of fun in that. She won't sleep up there very much. He turns that damn TV off, turns that light off. And she jumps up there and gets up to it. Then sometimes she don't. Sometimes she gets down the foot of the bed. Well, shot city. Eat that chicken.
So we're here with George Bolling. Recently I was cousin of mine came across a Facebook group that had some pictures along US 23 highway, and came across this picture of the Bearded Beauties, which is the Lions Club, and he sent it to me and said, "Hey, check this out. People's got questions about it." So it's a pretty neat picture, and my dad is actually the driver, and we're sitting here with the one and only. And figured we'd get Dad to talk a little bit about it, about the Lions Club and what all was going on in this picture, some of the people in it, some of the things they'd done, you know, what they did.
So tell us a little bit about the day the picture was made, Dad. What was the picture being made for?
The picture was being made mostly just for promotion, you might say, promoting the Lions Club. Even though the Bearded Beauties was not actually a program of the Lions Club, we were all Lions Club members. And different ones went at different times, and we went over the years. And one of the towns, the cities that I went to were, I went to a state convention in Richmond. I went to Chicago. I went to Atlantic City, New York, and San Francisco, and Nice, France. And I met a lot of people, and they were really nice and surprisingly nice for that matter. I don't know, the first time we went, we'd all get together and had talk, you know, going, how things were going, getting ready. We let our hair grow and our beard grow for 3 months without being trimmed or anything. And we had an old moonshine still. We usually ran a little bit off, and so
one of the stories you told us about, you went to New York. Tell us a little bit about the New York trip.
In New York, we got in New York at night, and the fellow who owned the automobile was sick and he couldn't go. So I was driving the 1911 Ford, T-model Ford. And so I parked it on Broadway, and the next morning they called me early. Said, "You have to get down here and move this car." And I said, "Why?" They said, "You got Broadway blocked." So I went down, and all these people were standing halfway across Broadway looking at the old car. Not just a car, we had animals. We had a coon dog, and we had goat and chickens.
So you all just left the goats, chickens, and stuff in the car while you all went to your room.
Yeah.
And so when you all went down the next day, people were all gauding around the car.
Right.
And let me interject real quick. The car that you took up there, could you tell us how y'all came across that car?
Well, my friend, he and his brother-in-law owned a car dealership in Norton. And this woman called him one day and said she was cleaning out her garage. And there was an old car there. If he would come and get it, he could have it. So he didn't know what it was. So he went up and he found out it was a 1911 T-model Ford. So just to make it, I guess legal, he gave her $1 for it. And so he didn't have much to do to the Ford to actually run it. And so they took it to Richmond once. Most of the time we put it on a trailer and take it to where the convention was, and we get it out, ride it in the parade. And all
Right.
that.
And was it New York the first trip it went on?
No, it was probably the state convention was the first, I guess, that they went. I didn't go on that one.
But you said the main reason they did it was to take it for the parade. You all would go through the parade, right? So tell us some of the other things when you all were in New York for the New York trip. Tell us some of the stuff you did. And you say you went to one of the shows in New York and they put you on TV?
Yeah, I went to the Jack Parr show, a friend of mine. He was here visiting Tonight show host. And they put us, we'd been in the paper the day before. And someone recognized us and they had us to stand up and we were introduced to the crowd on the Jack Parr show.
Did you have your overalls and all on?
Oh, that's all we ever took. That's all we wore. Our luggage was the same way. About the company, we held together with bale hay wire, and old Rogan shoes, and crock jugs for our moonshine, and old cap ball rifle, and shotgun that was bent to shoot around the corners.
Yeah. Now you said that year that at the Waldorf Astoria was where the Virginia delegate was held, and then you also told me there was also like different countries would have hospitality rooms, and you met a guy that you got to be good friends with that you saw at a lot of these conferences. Who was that?
That was Carlos Estavo. He was from Puerto Rico, and he was very large in the rum business. I was told about 80% of the exported rum out of Puerto Rico came from his family. I met him at their hospitality room. Got very well acquainted with him, and Carlos sent us a case of rum down to our room. Also sent us the fancy sombreros, which was real nice. And I saw him on 2 or 3 other occasions, and he was just a fine gentleman.
He was trying to get you to come and stay with him some, didn't you?
Yeah, he tried to get me to come and stay a couple of weeks with him, but I never got to. And I had another fella when we went on a trip to France and tried to get me to come to Peru and spend a couple of weeks with him.
Now, you also said one of the cities you went to was Chicago. Tell us about the time you tried to set the still up in Chicago. I know you mentioned one time when you were in Chicago, you did set a still up right there in the city of Chicago.
Oh yeah, it had been in the paper that we were going to run moonshine off. You know, we had some good mash, and so anyhow, we didn't know it. We didn't know it, but we set up directly across from the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms.
You picked a great spot.
So somebody called them, and so they got on us, and we called senators and congressmen and everything else. We never could get anything done to stop them. So they sent a man over, and agent over, and he was talking to more or less the leader of our clan, I guess, Charlie Daniels. He said, "I hear you all going to run off some moonshine." Charlie said, "Yeah." And he said, "No, you ain't." Charlie said, "Oh, yeah." He said, "No." And he pulled out his credentials, you know. So he was going to make it just pour it out. But that time, and then Charlie left. And they called me back and told me to delay him as long as I could. So I told him I'd send somebody. He's too heavy to carry, it's too heavy to work. I said, "Let me send somebody get a bucket, and we can do it that way." He said, "All right." So without the man seeing me, I told him not to come back. So I sent one other one and then told him the same thing. So when I tried to send a third one, he said, "Nobody else is leaving here." But by that time, we got the camera people there, and it went on Associated Press. They carried it. And so after we got somebody there, and we picked it up and carried it over, we picked it out. But we got the Lido Award that year.
The what award?
The Lido Award is an award given by the Lions Club for promoting the Lions. And there was only one other club in the world that got it that year, and that club was in India. So our other club at home, we got the Lido Award that year.
Now, is this the same, talking about the moonshine and everything, is this the same time when you were sitting on the curb drinking and the cops came up and told you it was against the law?
I wasn't drinking, I was sitting on the curb, but I had about a half-gallon crock jug. That was in Washington, D.C., that was. I on a trip coming back maybe from New York, or Atlantic City one, and these 2 cops come up, I was sitting on the curb, and he said, "What are you doing, buddy?" And I said, "I just resting a little bit." He said, what you got in that jug? I said, that little shine. He said, don't you know that's against the law? I looked up at him, I said, against the law? Anyhow, about that time, somebody shot a big firecracker. And those two policemen wasn't supposed to be in that area, so they were getting out of there fast. So they took off running, and I took off running right behind them. When they got to their police car, I jumped in the back seat. They said, what are you doing? I said, take me to my hotel. They said, we can't do that. I said, yeah, you can. They did. They took me to the hotel.
Now, a quick tangent, just talking about this picture and this image. Well, the first thing I noticed when I came across this image is this is the same image that we have some glasses that apparently were made. It's the same picture. I'm not sure. That's probably about the same year these were filmed, which was, when we say all this, mid-40s, 50s?
The 60s, I think.
60s. That's kind of interesting. It's little glasses, North Virginia, home of the Bearded Beauties. We've got a few of them. And did you say, do you know who the person who got these made? Or?
Yeah, Warren Honeycutt was the man. He was into novelties at that time. And so he had come up with that idea. And so he gave me a set of them. And of course, he had them to sell. He was at that time, he was in the business of novelties.
Well, we're at it. Looking at this picture, I think some people were curious online too who some of these people were.
All right, the man laying down here,
Charlie Daniels.
Charlie Daniels. He was sort of the leader of the group, very active in the Lions Club, and a very good upholding citizen.
And why does he have that big spoon or ladle with him?
Well, if you don't see it, but there's a crow sitting on his hat. It's hard to see. He always had a live crow that sit on his hat. And so when he was in Miami one time, he was up on a large diving board. And of course, he had no intention of diving off, but he finally lost his balance and fell. On the way down, the crow flew off his hat and lit on some of it on the lady's hair who had purple hair sitting around the pool.
And who's the guy here with the guitar?
That man, it was sort of he was the pappy of the bunch, that's what I saw. That's Darby Breeding. And he was from Kingsport area, I think. But he came over and lived a long time over in Norton area. Because that's under the wheel. And this one, gentleman here, is Ralph Rasnick.
With the bent shotgun?
Mm-hmm.
And what was the point of what?
That was to shoot around corners.
Shoot around, okay.
And this here was Paul DeMore. No, I think this might have been Paul DeMore, but I'm not sure. I can't check for sure on it. It might have been Glenn Teasley, this one here.
And A.J. Lawson.
A.J. Lawson, this gentleman here.
So tell us a little bit about the trip when you all went to Europe, when you went to Paris or Nice or wherever city. When you went to Europe, tell us about that.
Well, flying over, we flew with BOAC, and prior to going though, a gentleman who was a curator for the museum in Big Stone Gap met me on the street one day, and he said, I hear you're going to take a trip to Europe. I said, yes, sir. And he said, are you going to spend any time in London? I said, well, don't know. He said, well, if you do, you need to go to the Bolling Museum. It's just outside of London. I said, well, I never heard of it, but I said, if I get a chance, I will. But I only spent about 30 minutes in London, and we had to take back off, and we landed at the Oreo airport in France. And we were going through customs, and I was carrying a mongoose box or something, and I ran into one lady in Tennessee who said her husband had one of them.
And I think you can actually see that, or at least one of the mongoose boxes here in this photo. I noticed it's hanging off the back. If you look at it, it says mongoose box on it.
Well,
Tell me what a mongoose box is.
Well, a mongoose box is about 3 foot long and about 1 foot in a rectangular shape, and half of it It's got a partition in it, and then at the bottom it looks like a little rat hole. A fur is tied to a wire that you can just hit with your finger and make that tail shake. The back part is covered with chicken wire. So there's nothing there but just some shavings in that compartment. The other compartment is covered over with a spring-loaded door. Attached to that door is a foxtail about 2 foot long. Maybe 2 foxtails hooked together, I guess. Anyhow, I was carrying the mongoose box through the airport terminal. This man came hauling out and said, "No mongoose, no mongoose." I kept trying to explain to him that it was just a joke. But I didn't speak his language very well. Anyhow, Charlie said, "Show him the mongoose." So I laid it on the floor, and there had a huge crowd around. I mean, a huge crowd. And so I got him down real close. I said, "Now you got to watch fast." I said, "He's fast." I said, "You can get down real close." I said, "He'll go in and out. You can't hardly see him." I got him down real close. I sprung that lid open, and that fox here come flying out of there. He did a somersault backwards. Everybody in that whole place started laughed at him so much. I went through custom with 3 gallons of moonshine, and they never looked at him.
So is there anything to share about the D.C. story? I know that's another place you said you went. Anything else to tell there about going to D.C.?
Well, we lost it. We had a skunk that we found going into as we were on the way to New York. But we stopped at Grand Rapids. And just outside of Grand Rapids, this mother skunk ran across the road with 3 little ones. Darby Brady said, "Stop, stop, stop." Said, "Get one of them." Somebody said, "Let's sting us to death." He said, "They've not got one bit older when they're young like that."
Which is a total opposite.
So most of the morning he went out and got it. The rest of the way into Grand Rapids, he had it right on the outside. They put the skunk in with the rooster. The rooster like him went crazy. Finally we got in, we had him deodorized. But on the way down back, we stopped in Washington, and we lost the skunk in the air conditioning unit. We had to get the help in the hotel to come and get the skunk out of the air conditioning unit. Then we lost, we had going to New York, we had a guinea. And I told him, boy, we would stop to water the animal. I told him, I said, "You've got to be careful with that guinea." I said, "If you give him a little bit of crack, he'll be gone." Well, sure enough, he got out in New York. We never could catch him, so I guess somebody ate the guinea. I don't know. We never did get him back. But, also, I'm trying to get checked in. We were actually staying in a hotel in Monte Carlo. We rode the train every day going to Nice. But I was trying to get checked in. I wasn't doing too good. Finally, this gentleman stood behind me and said, "Can I help you?" I said, "Well," I said, "if you can talk to this lady," I said, "you can." I found out later he spoke 7 languages fluently. He was from Peru. And his estancia was 1,000 miles from Arequipa. And Arequipa was his mailing address. And he said that one year he raised Arabian racehorses. Because he said you never know when they're going to be fast enough to race until they're grown. And said sometimes they have to dispose of them. He offered to give me an Arabian horse. I said, "I'll charge you $25 for detraining." But I figured it cost more money than I could afford to get that horse in the United States, so I didn't take it. But he did invite me to come and stay with him a couple of weeks. He said they raised everything they needed, with the exception of the spices, on their the snowshoe as they called it. Said he'd take a vacation one year and then his wife would take one the next year. They both of them never left at the same time. And he ran around with us a couple of days in Paris. Finally he said, I think he wasn't for real. And he left. But I don't know. Like I said, we met a lot of people. We were up in the hotel room. Doctor's friend of Charlie's was there, and so he asked me if I was going to the Follies. I said, well, I doubt if he'd let us in the way we're dressed. He said, they don't care anything about your hair or your beard. He said, you're about my size. He said, I'll lend you a suit. You ought to go see it while you're here. So John Harmon and I, another guy loaned him a suit. We went down to the Follies, which was only about a block and a half where we were staying. And John went up to check on the prices of the seats. He came back and he said, what kind of seats do you want? I said, I want the best seats in the house. I said, I don't figure I'll ever get to see this again. I want the best seat in the house. He said it was $8 and a half. Because I imagine it's probably $80 now. Anyhow, we didn't have a theater seat. We had a big Chippendale chair on the front row. And they put on one terrific show. Beautiful. And the woman that emceed it, every time she came out, she had a different Victorian gown on. And her voice was just almost hypnotized you. And they put on a terrific show. And then after the well, let's see, one day we went to the Louvre. Charlie, of course, he'd been to the Louvre before. He was standing out on the street holding a gourd we used to drink out of. All of a sudden people come by and started dropping money. Finally this couple came up and the woman took her husband's picture with him, and then he took a picture of his wife and him. And finally he spoke a little bit of French, you know. He said, I don't know where this guy's from. Finally Charlie spoke up and said, where are you from? He said, I knew you had to be an American. And he said, little town, you wouldn't know where it's at. He said, I might. He said, where are you from? He said, Coburn, Virginia.
So there you were in Paris, and the person you run into is from Coburn, Virginia.
Yeah.
Right next to Norton.
It's 11 miles from Norton.
So anyway, we got about a little over 23 minutes on this video. Let's go ahead and
shut it down.
Yeah, we'll shut this one down, and we'll probably film some more. So check out the YouTube channel, and we'll have more stories of Dad talking about these. So thanks for listening.
That office, like when?
Every time you touch the pick on the hatch off, and you already chewing on the first handful.
I literally had to use the back over there already.
Pay attention. I had both of them. I don't think he pooped for sure. He made it pee.
He's like, touch me. You haven't changed them. I was like, this is disgusting. That's something very funny. He went, well, you can take a shower. He's like, I don't know what it's on. You did that for you. I'm like, oh, you got in there and you didn't like really for a week you were in the shower. And he was running around sweaty.
About that was like, he thought if you're getting it, it's okay not to shower like that.
Bill?
Yeah.
So he hasn't showered?
No, he had like, I think you should be going to the shower. So like, I was like, you're going to the shower. So I figured he did it.
No.
And then he was just like,
Brother operated a pool room in Norton. And he in one day, came Hub walking back through the pool room and carrying a rifle. And he came up to my brother and he said, Frank, he said, I've got religion And he said, I want to bring this rifle back to you that I stole off of you. But he said, I'll tell you right now, there's no way I can pay you back the money I stole off of you. 'Twas the night before Christmas when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hope that St. Nicholas would soon be there. The children were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. And Mama in her kerchief and I in my cap had just settled down for a long winter's nap. When out on the lawn there rose such a clatter, I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters and threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the new fallen snow gave a luster of midday to objects below. When what to my wondering eyes should appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer. More rapid than eagles, his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, O Comet, on Cupid, on Donder and Blitzen. To the top of the porch, to the top of the wall, now dash away, dash away, dash away all. As dry leaves before the wild hurricane fly, when they meet with an obstacle and mount to the sky. So up the housetop the coursers they flew, with a sleigh full of toys and St. Nicholas too. And then in a twinkling I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof. As I drew in my head and was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed all in fur from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack. His eyes, how they twinkled, his dimples how merry. His cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard on his chin was as white as snow. The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke in it encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a little round belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word and went straight to his work, filled all his stockings and turned with a jerk. Laying his fingers side of his nose and giving a nod, up the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. Yeah. But I heard him exclaim as he drove out of sight, Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night.
Yay!